Hello and welcome to the Handcrafting Your Retirement podcast with your host, Brett Ramsey, where we talk about what you want in retirement and how to make it happen. I'm Wendy McConnell. Well, Brett, I'm being told that you don't have a story today, but a tale to tell.
Apparently a tale of woe.
Oh, a tale of woe. Oh, okay. Now it makes sense. All right. So what's happening, dear?
Well, no, I think this is the story that our guests today are at three different stages of something that I think a lot of us are all going to deal with and we're all going to face, but we don't want to talk about. And so today's story is the story when I first had to talk about it. And so I think people can relate to this story and why this is one of the, I think, most challenging things that I have to deal with as a person, not just as an advisor. So when I was younger, my mother passed away. She was very young when she passed away. She was in her 40s. And my grandmother was still alive. And I have two uncles. And at that funeral, my grandmother sat me down and said she was the youngest member of her family. And she had to watch all of her older siblings go through care. And they'd all ended up in nursing homes. And she looked me in the eye and she said, "Brett, you're going to have to be the one. You're going to have to be the one that makes the decisions because I need to know that you're strong enough to make them. And you know that I don't want to do that." And I was in my 20s and my grandmother, when I was a little boy, she lived out in the country in the Ozarks. And she would say, "So you're going to build your house on the hill in the pines right there. And you're going to take care of me when I get older." Right. And this was when I was, 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, "Yeah, Grandma, I'm going to build my house on that hill and I'm going to take care of you when you're older." Well, when that older comes, it's just hard. And it was very difficult to hear that. And it's very difficult to know what that means and how to process it. And it's probably one of the things in my life that I felt the most ill-equipped to ever deal with. And I have a really close friend of mine. He jokes, he calls me the Tin Man. He says, "I have no heart." And I said, I would like to think that I have a lot of heart, but I have a hard time expressing it because dealing with empathy and emotions and caring is just not something, quite frankly, that's in my toolkit very well. I'm not great at it. I'm way better at equations and analysis and the technical aspects of making sure that your money lasts one day longer than you do and all of the math. And that's why I picked engineering. I didn't pick something that was warm and fuzzy. And so my hardest thing that I have to do in my life is to try to allow the empathy and the caring that I really feel to come through. And I think that the three people that I have on the line with us today that are a part of this podcast are three of the people that I know and that I think are quite frankly so much better at this than me. It's just something that they have maybe more naturally than I do. But what I think the reason why I'm bringing this topic today is because a lot of our clients are at an age where they're healthy, they're enjoying their retirement, and their greatest fear is what happens if I'm not healthy. And the three guests that I have today are all dealing with different stages of watching their parents go through that. And I want our listeners are both sides of this equation. They're the parents and the loved ones that are going to have to care. But what I really want is for the parents to hear, if they haven't had to go through it themselves, what it means when someone becomes a power of attorney or a primary caregiver and making decisions. So that's why I invited, Dean, who has gone through this with two parents. Stephanie is going through it in a unique way with her mother and her father. And then Christine is just starting to live this out with her mom. And so a little hint here. I know all these people really well. I'm really comfortable with them. But what I'm going to let them do is introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about their parent or the person that they're caring about. So you can hear their story because I'm going to ask them some questions. But really, this is about hearing, I think, how challenging it is to be the person that has to step in and that has to start making the decisions. And the more we can do to prepare for that moment, I think, one, the more manageable it is. But I just want you to hear their story. So with that, I'm going to start with the person that has gone through it. I'm going to call it the longest, not because of age, but just because of his parents going through both with a dad and a mom. So I'll start out with Dean, just kind of telling us a little bit about his family story and how he had to help care for his parents.
Sometimes when it starts, you don't know it's starting. So our journey probably started 10, 12 years ago when my dad was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The blessing was that they had moved from my childhood home closer, at least closer to my sister, not closer to me, but closer. And so it was a little easier to start that process. And he was fine, and my mom was fine. But that's when we started, seeing doctors, trying to have conversations about, do we need help? What happened? And then he passed away 3 years ago. And then we started to deal with my mom's deterioration. They were both in their 90s when they passed. So anyway, it has been a different journey with both of them because of different, I'd say, Alzheimer's finally took him, and then I think she just wore out. She just got tired. But anyway, it's interesting, and it was different in both cases. And luckily with my mom, her mental capacity was really good all the way up to the end. And so it was a whole lot easier for us, I think, to have these kinds of discussions. Not easy for her from a standpoint that she was very stubborn, and she was the oldest of 10 kids. And so she was very used to taking care of herself and others. So it was interesting conversations, but that's kind of how we got about it. And they're both passed. She passed in February. So,
how about you, Stephanie? How about you tell us a little bit about your family structure and helping your mom and dad, how that's going?
Yeah. So my parents live in Florida, and I'm here in Indiana. And my mom was diagnosed in 2020 with dementia. And my dad is the primary caregiver, and my brother and I, we try to step in where we can to assist them, since we are both here in Indiana. But yeah, it can be a challenge to since we're have the distance component to everything. But my brother and I do our best to get down there and rotate and check in with them, when we can.
And your dad's still doing pretty well and lives completely on his own, correct?
Right. My dad is 81, lives on his own, and he is just amazing at caring for my mom. And he spends pretty much every day, a couple hours every day with my mom in the facility that she's in.
Well, this last person, I know the story well because this happens to be my wife. But I'm going to let her tell the story from her perspective, because I think it's really important to hear a little bit about what she originally thought this was going to be like and what it's like. So Christine, why don't you tell us about your situation?
So I am Brett's favorite wife, and we live here in Indiana and have since 2000. But I'm originally from Tennessee, and that is where my entire extended family is. I was raised there. My mom and dad lived there their whole lives. And 13 years ago, my father fell. He was in great shape. Both of them were doing very well. They lived in the house they had built and had lived in for about 40 years. He fell, broke his neck, and within 2 weeks died. So it was very traumatic, sudden, the first one of his really peers to pass. And so that experience really, although being super painful, was super short-lived. So that was about 13 years ago. And then my mom, we eventually sold that house. That was hard for her to take care of. And we helped her downsize into an apartment, and she was living on her own. She has 9 brothers and sisters, or had 9 brothers and sisters. She was the last surviving sibling of that family. A really big network of friends and neighbors, Sunday school. We're talking, plugged into the community for her entire life. Then about 3 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she's also had other extenuating heart issues. She's on her second pacemaker, But in all of this, because she had her family has such a history of heart disease in their family, we always thought my mother would die first. I mean, that just sounds a little bit morbid, but that's kind of the way that it was set up. We thought that my father would live longer. So there was that first pivot when my father died. And then when my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's, she continued to live on her own, but from a distance of 7.5 hours. Driving is the only way to get there. It was a connecting flight. So I just drove down. I didn't realize, I don't think, how much, her health was deteriorating. I have a brother there, and, he has his own family, and he was helping out. I have cousins that were helping out, but really it just went from, she's not doing very well to just a sudden downturn. And she went into congestive heart failure. And I've, of course, been down there quite a bit, but then at that point, we went down there. We had to, make the move to have her come up here and live in assisted living. Now, not for lack of me trying to get her here for the last 12 years. I wanted her to come when she was well and, more able. In fact, we had picked out apartments. We put down deposits here. She was coming to Indiana. As much as she hated leaving the South, she was coming, and it just never came to fruition until actually it was a point where she had to come. So that's kind of my perspective. And now she's here, and she's 4 minutes from my house, and it's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think that leads to one of my first questions, is because I've watched all three of you have to deal with what I call just some of the practical issues of being what I call kind of, I hate using the word first responder. I don't want to denigrate that from people that are in that profession, but kind of that first point of contact when someone needs to be there. And you've each had a different aspect of it. And so, you just heard Christine talk about moving her mother from 7.5 hours away to 4 minutes. And I know that that's had a profound impact. And so first I want to start with Dean, because I would like him to tell at least maybe one or two of the stories of, we're on the north side of Indianapolis, but his mother was in care on the south side. And that doesn't sound like it's very far. But Dean, was it far? Was it difficult sometimes to just practically be able to be there and to provide care?
First of all, it depends upon the type of care that you're providing. When we first started in this process, it was pretty clear that my caregiving skills were really about taking care of all the periphery, taking care of the house, taking care of anything they need to do with paperwork, with anything like that. My sister thought it was her gift to be a hands-on caregiver. I never thought that was my gift. Okay, and so we always had people for that. But I think the thought process, whether it was during the care period or before, is that an hour is not an hour. An hour is 4 or 5 hours, because you don't just go and get there and take care of something and leave. And my mother and I got into it one time. I was actually in Kansas City calling her because I talked to her about every day. And something was said because we had made arrangements to drop some paperwork off. And she's like, well, nobody came to see me. And I said, well, we didn't have time that day. And she's like, well, you could have just taken 5 minutes. And I just started laughing. And then 20 minutes later, after we were arguing about it, I said, we've been on the phone for half an hour. That 5-minute thing doesn't exist. So I think one of the things that hour not being 5 minutes away does create is it's an all afternoon, or it's an all evening, or it's a half a day to try to take care of some of the things that don't take very long, but you can't just go and do them. So I think that's even with her and trying to spend more time with her, some of her physical limitations were more back issues. And so just riding an hour to come and visit was something that she would not do because it was so uncomfortable for her. So an hour it's not 7.5, but it wasn't something that was just, hey, she's just an hour away. So
right. And I think that's really one thing I want our listeners to hear is sometimes, as our families spread out and we're starting to make these decisions, and we're picking someone to be in a certain role in our life, even in Dean's case, a financial power of attorney, maybe not even the day-to-day caregiver. You're asking, whether you realize it or not, a much more significant time commitment from their life than you perhaps. And I get to observe it. And so I just think that there's some practical things, because now I'm watching Stephanie having to deal with something. And Stephanie, how, I know it might be a direct flight, but when something goes wrong and you feel like you need to be there, just what's the practical reality of trying to get to Florida?
It can be a challenge, especially with 2 teenage girls. So I'm kind of the sandwich generation, trying to take care of my family and my kids and make sure that they've got what they need, but also care for my parents at the same time. So you just have to make it happen. And one thing that I've learned through the whole process is you have to be flexible. You have to learn to adapt. And I'm grateful that, my kids are understanding, and they know that I may miss some school function or something, that they're involved in. But yeah, I may not be in the daily life of caring for my parents every day, but I do check in with my dad every single day and see what he's needing, what's happening, and try to make that decision on do I need to go down there? My mom had a heart attack here in, I believe it was in March of this year. And I really felt like I've got to go down there. It wasn't the best time, but it was something that I had to do to make sure that not only I could see what was happening and I could care for them, but I was also getting that sense of peace for myself to know that everything was going okay.
Well, Christine, I know how important it was for you to be involved, and the difficulty of moving your mom from basically her lifelong, home to here. But let's just talk about the practicality of having her close by. I mean, how has that changed your interaction with her? And do you think that was necessary? Has it been just kind of your thoughts on how that went?
Well, I mean, I can certainly relate to what Dean said. Even though she's 4 minutes away, even, dropping something off to her, she's she would like some more milk or something, and so I could just run over there and drop it off. And she, I want to stay and visit. I want to be her daughter still, I don't want to be the delivery person, but at the same time, I'm a little bit of both. So I think that it does, even though she's close, I'm so thankful that, I used proximity as one of the criteria in choosing the assisted living facility that she would be in, because as I drive past it all the time, I don't feel as though I'm making a special trip. You know what I'm saying? I can include her in my daily routines, which that sounds a little bit demeaning, but that's not what I mean by that, but just that it's convenient, because I have been, Stephanie, where you get that call from your brother or from your cousin who says, Aunt Mary's in the hospital, and you just drop everything, run home, get your suitcase, and get on the road just as fast as you can, because you can't get another flight out that night. So you just got to get there. And that's a very, daunting way to live on that. You've always got the bag packed, ready to go. So I think having her nearby, I think the transition, I had no idea. Let me tell you that I used to be sympathetic to people that helped one of their parents, and now I'm certainly empathetic. That's a huge difference. I had no idea. So when, she went from living, independently to being 100% dependent on someone and wheelchair bound in a matter of weeks, like 4 weeks. And, I was there for most of that time. And if I hadn't already started the process in looking for somewhere for her to be here, I don't know what I would have done if she had already been in that bad of shape when the time came to actually make the physical move. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like you need to have some prep work lay down before you get to that point, which is hard because then they're like, I don't want to leave this. I'm okay here. Well, you're like, well, you need the backup plan to be in place.
No, I think it's a great transition here of just watching that over the last 6 or 7 months in our own life, and talking. Some of our other past podcasts, we've talked about this preparation, and so Dean, when you said it kind of came on fast, but then when you had the diagnosis with your dad, roughly how long did it take from starting that process to practically, when you had a facility where you felt comfortable where he could be?
That's a whole series of events in itself. Okay. Because my mother was, healthy for an 80-some-year-old gal, they certainly wanted to stay in their home as long as they could. And, in dealing with other clients, I knew some of the pitfalls of that. And so, we interviewed people to come in and help, that could come in and do some basic things to help out around the house. Cause, my brother was, 2 hours away. My sister was farther than that away. And, my mom was very funny. My mom was a very particular lady. She could see a dog hair on the carpet from 50 feet away. So our house was very, very neat and meticulous. And one of the first things she asked when we started to interview caregivers was, now, will you guys clean the ceiling fans? And she said, no. Well, that was just almost unacceptable to my mom because, they get dirty. And so we're here to help you, not to be your servant in this case. And we don't want to hurt ourselves trying to do those types of things. We want to be here to take care of you. But I think the issue is that for the first several years, my mother did the caregiving while my dad was slowly deteriorating. And, one of the challenges of that, and that's one of the things that I talk to clients about is if they have the means to take care of getting help, is that the inevitable happened and they fell in the shower and my mom broke her shoulder and then all of a sudden they were both in trouble. Okay. But typically I think as it happens in a lot of those cases, my dad broke a hip for the second time. And at that time, it was the catalyst that kind of kicked him into really needing not to go home. And fortunately, it was right at the start of COVID. And so what it did do was make us make some decisions in a hurry to get them into position, because all of a sudden mom couldn't stay at home and see dad. So we had to make some decisions fast on where they would be, where she could be, and they could live together at the time. So, but it was about 5 years into that process when we started to really look at that. They never had in-home health care. That never got accomplished because she was just never comfortable with it at the point. And so we would do what we could do, on a weekly basis to help make sure that everything was taken care of if they needed to get something. And my mom didn't drive. So that was another kind of caveat in our relationship was my dad. My mom was never comfortable driving. So, kind of dealing with how she gets her groceries, how everything gets taken care of was always another issue to deal with.
Yeah, it was just those practical logistics of that. And once again, you brought up a good point that finances can maybe be a tool to help with that, but it certainly doesn't solve all the emotional problems that come with these decisions, especially in married couples where one needs care and the other one is still healthy. But you're hearing Dean's story, and I'd say that's reasonably probably similar to your situation with your parents, isn't it, Stephanie? Your parents were living in Florida, correct? When your mother got her diagnosis. So maybe just how long from kind of the beginning to her finding the care level that she needed?
Yeah. So they retired in Florida, and lived many healthy years there. And so, yeah, when she was diagnosed, Dad just kind of takes over, starts caring for her. and they lived she lived at home, and then it just got to the point where we knew at some point in time she was going to have to go to a memory care facility because Dad just wasn't going to be able to care for her. I mean, there was an instance where she walked out of the house and walked down the street, and Dad did not know where she was located. And so he's like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to get her someplace where she's going to be safe and can be cared for. So, so then it's the challenge of finding the right facility, and the facility that's going to care for her the way she needs to be cared for, with dignity and respect. And so in these past 2 years, we have put her in a memory care facility. She was at a facility for about 18 months, and it wasn't great. And my dad, they've been married for 59 years, and he loves his bride so much that she wasn't getting the care that he thought was good enough. And so he would vent to me every day about what was going on there. And, that takes a toll on you, hearing all this day in and day out. And then eventually when she had a heart attack, we realized that it wasn't, this facility she was in wasn't going to work, because now she was not mobile, and they were struggling to get her from her wheelchair to her bed. And we needed to get this a Hoyer lift to help get her moved from place to place, and where she was wouldn't have that lift. So we ended up moving her to a different facility, and she's been there since April, and now we're getting ready to move her home, because like we were talking about, we focus here at Artisan Wealth Strategies, we focus on making sure your money lasts as long as you do. But if you don't have the funds to care for your loved one, then you have to get home so they can get the care that they need. Having a 24-hour caregiver at home is going to be better than paying for a facility and a caregiver. So that's kind of where we are now with my family and what's going on here. So.
Yeah. Well, I know that's not an easy story to tell. So thank you for just sharing that. That's really what I would like to hear from everybody kind of one more time, of just kind of sharing it's hard to ask the question, right? But, we can talk about money and the ability to pay for care and the details and the specifics, but maybe you could share, each one of you kind of think about it and share kind of that emotional story part of it, like Stephanie just did, of how it changes your relationship with your loved one, right? Like I said, because you have to do some things. Just talking to a client yesterday that's in that difficult situation where her father has cancer. It's most likely not going to be treatable. And we were talking about cars and stuff that he owned. And I was like, well, he's never driving a car again. Why are we still paying a payment on a car? Once again, I'm the Tin Man. It's because he loves that car. And what are we going to do about it, right? So maybe kind of that aspect of it, that we've talked a lot about the practical of getting close by and how it takes a while sometimes from the diagnosis to here, but sometimes it goes fast. But what's maybe that emotional toll of having to be practical and do things that are hard decisions to make for someone that you care about, that used to be the one that cared for you? Maybe Christine, you could start us about how that's felt for you.
Well, so my background is I'm an accountant. So from a financial standpoint, I felt capable of being able to help my mom. But from a privacy standpoint and a responsibility of being the mother-daughter relationship, I mean, she took care of everything. I was 100% hands off. My mom took care of all her finances. She and my father, that's just not something we grew up intermingling with. When I was the executor of his estate, after that was all tied up in a bow, it was handed back over to my mom, and my mom paid her bills on time, got everything taken care of. To have that, for me to take over that responsibility, I think was quite a transition of, I I loved her so much. I would have done anything for her. I was, willing to do anything for her at that point. But it was a little bit of a change of, hierarchy. I think that it was a relief when I did take over. I think that she's a very private person. Even to me, she doesn't, you didn't know how sick she was because she was telling you that she was okay. Not that she was trying to hide something, but just that she wasn't going to complain. So she's very smart. She's, her mental faculties are intact and she's doing fine. But I think probably what I didn't realize at the time, I have 3 children now. The youngest is 19. When my children had an injury or a setback in their lives, it was more of a linear progression back to being well. My son, broke his elbow pretty much, had to have Tommy John surgery. It's going to be a year to get all the way recovered, but it's a set path. That's not how I think when you're dealing with a family member, an elderly stage of life, that they are going to be up and down. You know what I'm saying? Like one week she would be fine. And then we find out that she's going to have to get her pacemaker replaced, and it's a big setback, and she's tired again. And, she goes from needing a wheelchair to being able to use her walker. And then today she can walk just fine. And then, 2 weeks, she may, her blood pressure may be up and she's back to not feeling like she can do that. So it's something where you can't make you have to be much more flexible. I think Stephanie mentioned that before, that it's something that has to be changing. But I do think it was great when I was able to get to the point where, like, Mom, I'm taking it all. And I think it was a better break than to take a piece of it at a time. My situation, it became such an extreme healthcare problem where she wasn't capable of doing it at that point. And I just took everything. Now, the transition period has been much longer than what I thought. I was like, oh, I'm an accountant. I can do all this. I'm going to get everything online. We're going to have all this set up on auto pay and it'll be perfect. Oh my goodness. A month later, I'm still on the phone with the, state of Tennessee trying to transfer something here to Indiana. It's much longer process than what I anticipated.
Yeah. And it takes a toll on you emotionally. So Dean, how about you? How about just kind of some of the emotions that you've lived through and how it has impacted you, like of being that person that's caring as you're watching them struggle?
Just because, it was 2 separate situations at this point. I remember the day that my dad, for the first time, was unsure of himself. He wasn't confident to do something. And I think that's when the emotions started to happen, that I asked him a question, and he was always a do-it-yourselfer. He owned a bunch of houses. And so I grew up working on houses with him. And so he was over early in his diagnosis. And I asked him a question. We were in the garage about something electrical or something. And he all of a sudden said, I can't tell you. And so I think the emotions for me started then, because all of a sudden I knew he was never going to be the same. And so then I think just watching my mom kind of just care for him during that time frame and slowly deteriorate, I think the emotions got harder for both of us. I know that when he needed 24-hour care, we were certainly all, heartbroken. And at that time, he was at the point where he just really very quickly didn't know any of us. And so I think that was a big change in our relationship with Mom, because they were able to be together. She would go and see him every day. But the emotions of having her, wonder what what he knows and how to talk to him and do all that was tough. I think watching him go through that, and when he passed, they were a month shy of being married 72 years. So, she had been, the primary caregiver for him for all those years, because he couldn't do any of the other stuff she did. But just watching that transition, And then when he passed, she became different. And although she was functional and mentally very good, I just saw, what her emotions were about watching him be in 24-hour care. And I will tell you that during the last part of her life, we were having these discussions because she was having more mishaps. She was falling more, and it was a blessing. She never really was injured. She would just say that my mom was only about 5'2", and so she said, I just kind of slipped down, and I've got a big booty, so I never hurt myself. But I do know that the emotion of watching her become more concerned about going to another level of care was hard on us. And I know that she didn't want that. She was always in her own apartment, and we were able to pay for somebody to be there with her, basically to play cards, I think, for about 6 hours a day. But as a companion, she had somebody to be with that, I think helped her spirits. But I think just the emotion of watching her deal with that and then deal with her own challenges physically, it was tough on the kids and certainly the grandkids. I know we had an event where I didn't know, but my kids and my grandkids all went to visit her one day, and she turned them down, which was tough on them. But she didn't feel up to seeing people. So I think, just watching someone who had always been, the matriarch of the family, who always took pride in taking care of everybody and making sure everybody was happy, go to a point where she was not able to see visitors was just hard.
Yeah. How about you, Stephanie? What was was there a key moment emotionally for you that sticks out to you that you would like to share with us?
Yeah. So I think just a couple different times I can think of was, one was just putting mom in the memory care facility. That was a hard transition, being there and seeing that this was a big step that we had to take. And I can just remember flying home on the plane and trying to just keep my emotions intact while I was on the plane. And, just trying to push it down while I was trying to get home. And it definitely puts a toll on you. And then just here recently, when I went down this last time and saw her and saw the caregiver using this Hoyer lift to move her from her chair to her bed. And I was like, it just kind of hit me like, wow, we are here. This is where we are now. And so that another difficult time. And I always remember to have self-care. And I'm grateful that my dad has community around him, because even though he's there 2 to 3 hours a day and he tells me he's tired when he leaves, that he still has community around him, someone that he can go to and talk to about this, whether it's, his family or other friends that have spouse in the same situation. You've got to have that. You've got to have that downtime to rest and, get your body back ready mentally to take care the next day. So
I think that's a good way to wrap up this episode. So I think the key thing that I want our listeners to hear today is, Stephanie has said it, the sense of community, someone that can listen. If that's all we can be for you, if that's just what you need from us right now is to have somebody to listen, then call. Let us know what you're going through, because as you can hear, we as an entire organization are living it, right? We are not just here to advise you. We're living through this ourselves, or have lived through it. And that experience and that empathy can be helpful. In each situation you heard, each one of their situations was different with their parents and where they're at in the journey. And it's not some straight line, as Christine said, or it's just going to be this linear health event. It's all over the place. And You heard the other word, flexibility. So when we use the word handcrafted, that's what we're talking about, right? Because your situation's going to change. You're going to need different things at different times. These aren't just simply words that we use to try to make good marketing slogans, although we hope that they are. What we're really trying to hope for is that you hear these words of saying that we're here to care for your particular situation. So with that, thanks for listening to this episode, and I'll turn it back over to Wendy.
Well, Brett, how do people get in touch if they would like to reach out and give you a call?
Well, you can find us while we're sitting here. My phone's buzzing with phone calls inbound. We have a wonderful phone number that you can find on our website, right? So go to that World Wide Web out there and see that internet. And, at artisanwealthstrategies.com, all of our contact information is right there. And that's the best way to start a conversation, because we can't help you if we don't know you. And if we don't know what's going on, we can't give you advice.
Well, thank you to all of you for all of your heartfelt, touching stories today. I'm sure it was very difficult to speak about. And thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time.